Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor at USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being with us today in class. We're delighted that you're here. We broadcast 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. John is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at Genesis Communications Network. I'm Vincent Finelli. And if you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line. Take us with you. You can take us with you as you travel. 605-477-3249. With us today is Robert in Kansas. Welcome, Robert.
Hey, thank you, Vincent. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, I'm delighted you're with us. And I was telling John who Robert in Kansas is, Robert Stewart in Kansas. And I said that, we teach this class, and we get people who call in, students who call in, and when they are really bright, and when they are articulate, and when they have their facts together, and when they sound like we do, I'm really interested in talking to them and seeing if they want to be an instructor at USA Prepares. George in New Hampshire's one. Kyle in Montana's one. Guineith Isaacs is one. Robert Stewart is one. Sharon in Kansas is one. There's a lot of us who have just called in, expressed views. We're right on point. Think the way we do. And that's how it goes, class. So you're going to hear an articulate man, Robert in Kansas, who is going to give his commentary on lots of things. Robert, we were talking yesterday off the air. I mentioned a story that is all over the news, something that infuriates me, something that, actually has taken, I would say, achievement and lowered my achievement by what some greedy people have done, some undeserving people. And what am I talking about? The scandal that's rocking the higher educational system, the scandal that is saying that if you have enough money, even though your child is undeserving of going to a major university, if you have enough money, you can get that child in. And what that's done is it's lowered, as mentioned so often here, the bars and standards. So if you have money, you can get your way in. You can pay to play. If your parents have enough money, you can go to the university, and you can push other people out. You can push people who are deserving, who have worked hard, but haven't achieved the test scores that you have allegedly or purportedly achieved because you've cheated your way through. You've had somebody take the test for you. You've had the proctor change answers for you because the proctor has been bribed by someone who's been bribed by your mother and your father or both. It's an outrage. My degrees are worth less than they were before this scandal hit. So are everybody else's. Robert, your thoughts?
Well, Vince, I don't know if a lot of the degrees are worth much anyway. Certainly, certain degrees are going to give you a level of information you're going to carry forward into the real world and use. But there's so many people in debt and going to these universities that are obtaining meaningless educations that aren't going to help them create value in the real world. But yeah, the lead into our conversation, I wanted to do a real big picture show, and you said the key word money, and that's my lead into what I want to talk about, the influence of money. You said it already, that someone has the means so they can get that Harvard designation on their son or daughter's transcript, or they're not their transcript, their resume, and then that sets them up, obviously, because it is a big club, and they say, oh, well, you went to Harvard. Well, now you have this inside track at this corporation, and you're going to, it is a way of helping your kids beat a system that is already set against them in many ways. If you're a white man, a Christian, heterosexual, or an Asian, a Nordic Asiatic man, it's, there's factors involved with higher education where they exclude you from going to the finest universities, even though you are the qualified candidate. So the merit has already been stripped from the system. And then you see this manifestation here where they're using money to maybe get their white children into the school or get their Asian children into the school because they've been shut out by the algorithms that get you into these schools.
Okay, so here's some facts. I went to school in the 1970s, the early 1970s. Graduated in the mid-1970s. No one, and I went to I'm not bragging class, I'm just telling you the facts. I went to a university that was in the top 40 or top 50 in the United States. It was not Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Columbia. It was not. But it's certainly recognized, and I don't think anyone listening to this class would not know the name of that university. The value of that university degree, I'm talking about my bachelor's degree in science, in economics and finance, opened doors. What it proved to somebody is that I was able to endure the years of education, the grueling process that it took back then. And those doors that were opened during the interviews, all the interviews I've ever had, every interview of my entire life, no one asked me this question. No one. So what were your grades? No one. The reason I believe that no one asked me what my grades were is because they believed that if I attended that institution and if I graduated, that meant that I was good enough at what I was applying for, and I sustained the interview, that I was offered these jobs based on the sheepskin with the name of that institution. Now we have students whose parents have paid for education and paid to grease the skids to bribe athletic officials within that school and others, faked their way in. Do you want a dentist who has faked his way through school? Do you want a surgeon who has faked his way through school? I know a politician. Yeah, me either. Rhetorical question. I know a politician in the corrupt state of Missouri who got a scholarship to a college, a Bible college. Praise the Lord. This guy voted for corn to ethanol to be put into our fuel, to destroy the fuel systems of our cars. It makes absolutely no sense to grow corn to make fuel for a car. Makes no sense. The example is it takes more than a gallon of fuel to make a gallon of ethanol. Why would anybody do that? Because of money. And I remember sitting in the car with this, or my truck with this guy, and I turned and I looked at him and I said, "Did you vote for that?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Did you ever take a science class? Are you serious?" So that's the kind of things that are wrong. That's what's wrong with society. We've allowed people who don't deserve to be there to be there. Just look around us. We're falling down. We're falling fast because we have people who don't deserve to be there. Look at these actri, which is my term for actors and actresses. That'd be the plural of actors and actresses, actri. Look at them. They mutilate their bodies. They pierce their noses. They pierce their nipples. They tattoo and brand themselves, and they say, look at me. What they're really saying is, I can't believe I got here on so little and make so much.
Vincent, that's what I want to talk about, Vince. I want to talk about the big picture of why all this is happening today and really get into the 35,000-foot view of what's really going on and why all this is occurring. That's what I want to get into, for sure.
Well, let's do it right now, Robert. I'm all for it.
Well, I don't know if we can do it in an hour, but I do want to try. You mentioned money, okay? So the level of this conversation really is going to be, if you look at the back of your U.S. dollar, you're going to see a pyramid with an eye at the top of it, and you're also going to see the words, "In God We Trust." And I want to suggest to you that the people running our government worship a very different God than maybe you think they do, the God that they mean on that money and who that eye really represents. So I want to talk about that, who that is, and what these people have planned for mankind, for God's creation in general, because that's really what we're dealing with. We're dealing with something that we can get off into these tangents about these smaller issues, but really what we're dealing with is a spiritual war between good and evil. And we as human beings are trapped in this deception. And I guess I can go ahead and give the name of what we're in. We are in a satanic slave matrix is what we're in. So if you understand those three words, you understand what I'll be talking about today. The spiritual nature of it is satanic. The slave nature is maybe hard to see, but it's about control and taxation. And then, of course, the deception of the matrix. The whole program is to deceive us.
Excellent. Outstanding. I'm looking forward to it. I'm just going to sit back and relax and listen as you explain how this all works, how we got here. Robert Stewart in Kansas.
Thank you.
Robert Stewart's with us, and we're talking about the Satanic Slave Matrix. Robert, please continue.
You said it, Vincent, and that's to USA prepares instructors and students. That may be all that you need to do your own research. This is very complicated, but it is right in front of you. It's all right there. I know that Dr. Shealy has hinted at 13 families, committee of 300. Dr. Miller has talked about sensing something doing all this and a certain force and things like that. I know Vincent has given numerous examples and his attempts to correct and help his fellow man do the right thing, basically. And so it manifests itself in different ways, but really what you need to do is, if you look at the back of your dollar and you look at what is there, you could think of it as that this is the government or the people, not only our government or the people who own our government, but they own multiple governments around the world. They are essentially the world government, okay? And don't get too hung up on the money part, because money is actually just the tool of this government. Government, what it really means is guberment. It's a Latin term meaning governing of the mind or control of the mind. So the real situation we're dealing with is actually slavery. So money is just, what most people know about money is they want it. That's as much as they know about money, as they want some. Okay? But those who actually understand what money is, especially this current form and what we're given as money, understand the power of those who create it and the fact that our governments are essentially in debt to them. And then agencies like the IRS and others collect money to pay that debt to the real government, the people who own the money. And so what this whole system that we're in, if you wonder why Menard syndrome is so prevalent, things like that, what we're in, Vincent, is a deception, a type of deception that occurs from day one that you're born, because your parents were born into it. You go to school and you learn what you're supposed to learn and how you're supposed to be, which is compliant and basically rewarded for believing what you're taught. So you're taught all these things, and then you get rewarded for that in the education system. But what I have found is that the education is basically what it really is to dumb you down. It's to arrest your consciousness at a very early stage, and then to deliver the doctrine of Lucifer. Okay? And that last part is going to sound maybe a little strange, the doctrine of Lucifer. But really, when you start looking at why do we have the problems that we have, why do we have, and it could be anything, the perversion, transgender. Vincent talks about planned obsolescence and the accounting, the adherence to transaction rather than the creation of value, right? I mean, cancer. When someone gets cancer, they pay, $80,000 in transaction? That's great for GDP, right? But that's not economic creation of value. That's somebody getting chemotherapy, all right? So they are a transaction system, right? If you were a money government, you would create a transaction-based system because that is the power of your product, and it's the level of taxation. Every transaction is taxed. So when you think of how it all works, Vincent, you would probably be able to discern much better than most given your background. But it is a system of just forcing you into that taxation and then to control you with that. And then you bring in the spiritual nature that this is a deceptive program. I mean, it literally lies to you every chance they get. Now, they can't tell you that the winter is warm and the summer is cold, but they can tell you a series of lies that, once built upon, can control your entire consciousness from birth to death. So they start in school, and it continues through the media, through all these industries that control.
Yeah, hold that thought. Hold that thought.
Okay.
Robert Stewart, there's a comedian back in the 1970s. He went by the name of Flip Wilson. He was a black man. He was a great comedian. He's really, really funny. And he'd be politically incorrect today. And he would put on a dress, and he'd go on stage, and he's a black man, not a black woman, a black man. And he was masculine, but he would put on a dress, and he would say, "The devil made me do it. The devil made me do it." They were talking about this back then. We're talking about the satanic slave matrix. The devil made him put the dress on. Now, he was kidding, but he had a lot of insight for 1970. Robert?
Well, Vincent, I wasn't around then. It sounds like a sad deal. You said he was a masculine man, and he's putting on dresses. It doesn't sound like he should be doing that to me. But
right, and that's what he was saying. What he was saying is, this is wrong. This is absolutely wrong. I shouldn't be doing this. The devil made me do it. Okay, he was pointing at this evil, satanic kind of a thing. And I have a feeling that he was poking fun at what he saw some evil, twisted, deranged people doing. And he just said, the devil made me do it. And what I was doing is drawing those the connection between what you said about the satanic part of this and what they used to call the devil. And I remember my parents using the word the devil. I remember my relatives using the word the devil. And what they meant was evil. That's what they meant.
Well, let me, I was getting off into some weeds, Vince, and let me just real quick say that what I mean is the people in charge are running a satanic world government. The devil, Satan, whatever you want to call it. They use money as a tool to run this slave system. And the only way you keep 7 billion slaves is you do it through government. You do it through mind control. You can't wrestle them to the ground. You have to control their mind. They are dysgenesis. They always talk about eugenesis, like Hitler as being evil. These people are dysgenesis. So they want to put the worst people in the positions of power. They want to destroy every family they can. So eventually you destroy a community. You destroy enough communities, you destroy society, right? That's what these people are. They want to destroy God's creation, so you could think of that as mankind. That's his greatest creation. Or you could think of it as nature, right? They want to destroy all of it. They want to pollute the river. They want to, they hate all of mankind, but as you can see, they really hate white Nordic males, particularly. Christians, they don't like Christians for whatever reason, and that's what they're really against. Now, they hate black people, too. They hate all people, but they really hate 150 IQ white men who, will stand up, and they hate Nordic Asian people, it seems, a lot more than they hate Southern Asian people. But they hate all of mankind. I want to get that point out, but they just really hate, like, heterosexual, strong men who will fight for their people. That's what they really hate. It's people who stand up. Okay. And so that is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people who want to have you choose money over human beings or whatever you want to call that. They want you to, like, choose your career. Like, if you're a woman, they want to take you away from your children and your household and your husband. They want to get you working for a boss or just a corporation as opposed to your family. They want to take away the father too. Obviously, that's their. But they want to take away the mother too. The mother is the creation of all life, right? So they want to take her out of the home, and then the kids don't eat as well. The husband isn't taken care of. The home isn't taken care of. And that's what they want. They want to destroy marriage, destroy the family, and so that's really what we're dealing with. And I think you know all that, Vince, just from your own. Just from your own experience. You've been around longer than I, and you see all of this. You bring it up constantly on your show, the different manifestations of all of this stuff. And it's why we've had, like, if you want to know why have we had 60 million abortions in this country alone, 60 million. The reason we've had that is because we have an evil government, okay? And that a lot of people don't want to hear that. You're trained from day one that your teacher is good, that the government, the school is good, that the police officer who comes into class is good, that everything about their system, as long as you comply with what they say, you get a gold star and you move on. But if you start to say, wait a minute, I don't agree with you, you could get shut out of the class or a bad grade or whatever. And that same it works in our corporations the same way. The media is your enemy. The one thing about Trump I like the most is he says the media is the enemy of the American people. And if you really dissect that statement, I mean, that's a strong, he's saying that they're your enemy. They're lying to you. They're lying to you about everything. And it's not just the media. It's your school. And I don't want to get into something that's going to make people discredit the things I've already said, because I think they're lying about evolution, Vincent, and a lot of people say, oh, evolution is obviously true. Well, okay, I think they're lying about it. I think they're lying about a lot of things. Me and you have talked about, I'm a military veteran, right? I've talked to you about 9/11. We've talked about the moon landing, okay? So what I'm saying is that you're being deceived at a level that's it's so vast. that it's hard to comprehend, like, why do they teach you in school so firmly that men and women are equal? Why do they do that? Because then eventually you equalize woman and you create this, you destroy the dynamic of the family is what you do. And then you create divorce. And then eventually, if men and women are equal, why can't they get married? Or why can't two men get married or two women? If everything is equal, right? And then inevitably you have, like, why can't a man be a woman and a woman be a man? Everything's equal, right? Anyway, so they take this lie, and I'm not trying to put down women, but woman comes from man. I guess I'm talking about a biblical theory here, but woman is a copy of man. And I'm not saying that a woman is lesser, but in a lot of ways, a woman is inferior. They'll admit it as much, with physically. They'll say, oh, yes, women are physically inferior. Well, okay. But what I'm saying is that they want to teach women to be equal with their men and not subservient to the one they choose as their husband, because they want to destroy the natural dynamic of relationships between men and women. They literally want to destroy what creates a decent existence for mankind. Everything, and that's seriously what it is. And a lot of people say, no, you want to hold down women. No, the woman is the creation of everything, the heart of humanity, right? That everything is for a woman. The reason we build houses is to put women in them. That's the only reason. If we didn't have women, we could just live in a hole in the ground, those guys, right? So everything we do is for women. I'm not trying to what I'm saying is that what they're tricking women, and they're taking them out of their natural roles on purpose and telling them to be CEOs and leaders and all these things, where there's no more mothers left to raise the children. And it's an on purpose dynamic that people, either we're going to see it, or like you talk about, Vince, it might be too late. It might be where, education is too corrupted. I mean, and everybody's too perverted, and everyone's given over to evil too much. The brainwashing is too strong, where people are going to choose money over human beings all the time. Money will always come before material, the transaction, that system will always come before human beings will. And that's really what they're trying to do. It's to shift us into that mindset where, you come from monkeys. You're nothing. You come from nothing. You are nothing. There is no God. And then we can go all the way into theories that the earth is not a globe. You're not in something called space. The sun, the moon, and the stars revolve around us. Anyway, I don't want to discredit myself too much, but you can go into all these ideas that they're trying to deceive us on every level they possibly can in order to control our consciousness, so we remained enslaved to a demonic, evil system that is about transaction, is about that extraction from the human being at every single level possible, all the time. Like, you are a product to be farmed, and you are owned, right? Because you know about how you're owned in the corporate America, right? You are a stock, a livestock, and that's really what it is, Vince. That's the base of everything we're dealing with, is that someone owns you and you're to be extracted from. And if you ever wake up, well, what they have to have you asleep, because if you were awake, Vince, if people were to wake up to what's going on, they would not send their kids to schools. Okay, they would teach them themselves, or they would do anything they could to not have their kids go to these places. They would not pay their taxes. Of course, if me or you don't pay our taxes, right, we'll get arrested. It doesn't matter if one of us doesn't pay our taxes. But what I'm saying is, if people woke up en masse, then it would change the dynamic completely of the government, the private banking system, and the contracts under which we are subjects, that say that, you will pay on your individual labor income, you will pay taxation. Bottom 93% people, you will be taxed as a slave, like 30% of your income just right out of your paycheck every month, no matter what. You don't even see it. And then they give you back some at the end of the year and everybody's happy. And that system, is what I'm talking about. It's what the government's based on. It's the contract system. It's the courts. We talked about the police at some points, Vincent, how they're the lead into that industry, the police, and then you go to your court, and then you have your prison. It's just one of those industries, another form of extraction, but that's what it's all about. It's all about using the people for profit.
Okay, I've got 5 short comments to make about what you've just said when we come back. 5 one-sentence or so comments. We'll be right back. Robert Stewart's with us. And, Robert, you mentioned homes for the women. Well, I mentioned to Mrs. Finelli that this was her house. I was building it for her. My son and I built it for her. Exactly what you said. We have cows here on the farm, and we have a big bull. The bull is bigger, stronger than the mama cows. The bull will absolutely fight to the death to defend his family. That's what fathers do. Our daughter, these are all standalone comments. Our daughter was homeschooled, and you talked about the public training camp. Well, we knew how bad it was, and we took all of our children out of the public training camp. And our daughter started college at the age of 14, where at school, meaning the university, she learned that being a homo was just a different lifestyle. It's just a different lifestyle. And I said, are you kidding? If they were teaching plumbing, there'd be leaks everywhere. Next topic. Hillary Clinton in 1992. Hillary Clinton said, quote, now this was during her husband's first presidential campaign. I'm talking about the guy with the zipper, Bill Clinton. She said, quote, I suppose I could have stayed home and baked cookies and had teas, but what I decided to do was fulfill my profession, end quote. So she made fun of the women who stayed at home and raised their children. In my opinion, the highest, best, most important thing that a woman can do is be a mother and raise her children in her family, and the father being the provider and also help raise the children. But mom is the one who's there most. Mom is there with a 9-month head start with the child 24 hours a day before the child meets dad. So mom literally spends the most time with the child. And mom is the one who I believe is the most important in raising a child. The husband, the father, that's the guy who protects the mom, protects the child, provides the wherewithal so that mom can do the most important thing that a woman or any person can do, and that is raise a child. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, Vince, I know most of that about you already, and it's one reason I like your show and I like the instructors you have on, because it's just a deeper understanding of so many things. I've had to learn a lot of them the hard way, but then being a student here has helped me a lot too, just advance my knowledge and understand more. But yeah, the woman's role, it's just, let me just say that it's so vital, regardless of if she pursues other things. If you do have children and a husband and a home, like if you do have all these things to take care of, that's a lot right there. If your kids are well fed and well clothed, along with your husband, and your home is clean, and I mean, you understand, a woman is only limited by, I'm not trying to limit them at all. They could be a mom. Once their kids grow to a certain point, in my opinion, Vince, I think they do need the father more after a certain age. I think it is more about the father saying this is how the world is, as opposed to like a nurturing, caring thing. Whenever you're younger, you need that more. But it's the woman is. I mean, if she's taken out of that role, I mean, that what are the kids eating? What's the husband eating? What is diet to your health? I mean, you know, if she does have that time at home, could she garden? Could she start a home business? Could she literally do whatever she wants to do? Yeah, she could, and be very successful. That's the thing, is I think what they want to do is get women specifically into the workforce and controlled and working for somebody else instead of working for their husband, working for their family, or working for their, let's call it their home, their trust, their family unit. Working for that, they want them working for a corporation, and so they want to take that value from the family specifically, and that is so critical that it stays with the family. So yeah, but the male ultimately, you have to tell your son, hey, this is how things are, and Mrs. Finelli might not be able to do that like you can, Vince, and so that's, being a man is different. You're treated different by other men. You're treated different by, really. A lot of this, what I'm talking about, is a conspiracy against manhood, of being
Robert, we're out of time. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. I'm delighted to be broadcasting with Lee Wickenhauser. Lee Wickenhauser is responsible for me being on Genesis Communications Network. Lee and I have spent some time together over the years. And we both have a passion for automobiles and auto mechanics. And we're going to share with you things that you don't hear elsewhere, things that we've seen firsthand, things that might kind of surprise you. Welcome, Lee Wickenhauser.
Good morning, Vinny. How you doing?
Very well, Lee. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. I'd like to share a quick story with you. So here at the farm, we buy oil in bulk. We buy several different brands, but when we buy it like 10 gallons minimum at a time. And we have a lot of different vehicles here on our farm, and we have diesel engines and we have gasoline engines. And so all of a sudden, this was months ago, we noticed that our 2004 Chevy pickup truck with, maybe 250,000 miles, V6 engine, started consuming oil. Now, I'm not saying burning oil. I'm not saying leaking oil. I'm saying consuming oil. The same thing at the same time happened to our 2000 Mercedes-Benz midsize with about the same mileage, 250,000 miles on it. And it also is a 4.3-liter engine. Now, these engines are different. The Mercedes is more sophisticated, and it's got more moving parts, more horsepower per cubic inch of displacement, but they both started consuming this oil. And so I changed the oil again. Typical oil change for me might be 5,000 miles, change the oil, change the filter. They both still, all of a sudden, started consuming oil. And then I changed the oil again after another 5,000 miles after I bought a new batch of the same brand of oil. Oil consumption stopped. It went back to 1 quart every 5,000 miles or so. What I'm saying is I have observed what I believe to be either a mistake or a change in the formulation of the oil such that my engines, both the Chevy and the Mercedes engines, both, upon the initial oil changes with that one batch of oil, started consuming oil. Have you ever seen that, Lee Wickenhauser?
I have, and, I do a lot of research into, oil, whether it be for performance, daily drivers, trucks, tractors. I do a lot of research into it. Formulas have changed. There's, due to the EPA standards, there's a lot of changes where zinc is pretty much non-existent in oils anymore. Zinc was used back, up until about the early 70s in a higher quantity. Due to, it would kind of cushion the valves, prevent wear, keep the main bearing technology and the materials have progressed since then. So it was kind of a wear preventative, if there's anybody out there remembers the hot rodding days, there's zinc additives, or when, engine rebuilders and remanufacturers, they will use a zinc additive in cars that have flat tappet cams, for example, whether it's overhead cam or, under valve cam. So the oils have changed, and this is my personal philosophy. If an engine doesn't burn a light amount of oil, to me is bad. You need certain parts of lubrication processes to have oil and to consume it. Granted, if it's 3 quarts to every 3,000 miles, that's definitely not good. But a little slight oil consumption is good. With the changes in a lot of the formulations over the years, things have changed around. Now, here's a really good example of that. Years ago, there was like C14 codes or CH4 or CG4. What that means is there's different developments in oils. There's different standard weight ratings. There was your additives, and so this stuff all progresses over time. There's also when you look at an oil bottle, there's different things you want to look for on there. An API rating, which is S for gas, C for diesel. Most oils nowadays are both S and C rated. So just things to take into consideration. Cheaper oils have less detergents in them. The detergents help break down sludge, get it out, get some of the carbons out. Sometimes those detergents in there evaporate faster, and they also will show signs of, your oil consumption, even though the engine may not actually be burning it. It may just be evaporating some of those detergents out of there. So your oil is actually just not being burned. It's just going down in level because of that evaporation.
Okay, one of the things that I've noticed, Lee, is that the newer vehicles that have more sophisticated engines, like variable valve timing, and what I'm talking about is the variable camshaft timing, to change the opening and closing of the valves based on RPM and based on the demand that's put on the engine at that time to deliver more miles per gallon or more torque/horsepower as needed. And what I found is that if people, owners we'll call them, of these vehicles don't change their oil at the right interval, the detergent that's necessary in the oil to clean the engine is gone, wears out, disappears, and then the engine sludge up, and then the variable valve timing mechanisms, those solenoids, plug up, and then the engine doesn't run right. And I mean I'm talking like operates at maybe 20% of its potential. Not just runs a little bit bad, but really runs bad. Have you seen that as well?
Very much so. People sometimes, busy lives, people neglect their cars. You get sludge buildup. Here's 2 different versions of it. You have variable valve timing Hondas, known as VTEC, variable electronic timing. So when an engine reaches a certain RPM, it will open a solenoid and allow oil flow to reach where the cam gear is, which is hydraulically driven or hydraulically varied. So it'll push oil to that, and it'll either advance or retard the valve timing. Now you can get sludge in there. Ford used a similar system called cam phasers. Did the same thing, used oil pressure. For years, it was problematic. 2003, or anything with the 5.4 3 valve and some of the 4.6 3 valves did the same thing. They would just not hold pressure, and you start getting rattle, and next thing you know, your timing chains aren't accurate, and your timing's way off. It can't hold timing. It just, it messes with the fuel injection. Chevy, they went a little different route. They used, instead of using a cam phaser like that, they can basically shut lifters on and off hydraulically. And they have issues with it. People don't maintain their vehicles. The oil doesn't, they don't change it at the normal intervals, so you don't get those detergents in there cleaning out that system. And next thing you know, you have a lifter failure. Lifter failure wipes out the cam, can be, a few $1,000s to fix it. So, you are absolutely right saying that, not keeping up with oil changes, not using a quality oil can have adverse effects.
Okay. And how do you feel about those quick lube oil change places? And this includes Walmart as well, because they're pretty fast. What are your thoughts?
For just here, I have different views and opinions on that. Years ago, I managed a Valvoline instant oil change. There was good and bad about it. If you had a service tech that knew what they were doing, that wasn't concerned as much with how many cars they could get done versus the quality of the oil change, they're not bad. The downside is there's a lot of things that are skipped. You're driving in over a pit, a guy has limited access to certain items like grease zerks. Make sure your suspension is, properly lubricated. But basically they just drop the oil pan plug, drop the oil, time it, whether the oil is done dripping completely out or not. They throw the plug back in, throw a cheap filter on, and they fill it full of oil and they send you down the road. I myself am not a person that likes to do that. I'm a person that, I have a lift in my shop, and I will put my car or truck up on a lift, and I will drop the drain plug. I'll go around, rotate tires, check brakes. So, we're talking about a process of about an hour. And, check over the suspension. And at that time, one of the last things that I do is I drop the filter and I let that drain, and then I reinstall the plug and, reinstall filter and fill it full of oil. I don't believe in quick oil changes. I don't think oil changes should be done quick, because now you're not getting some of that stuff that's laying in the bottom of the oil pan out of the engine that, the filter may not have picked up, or there's just a little bit of sludge buildup in there that can come out. I myself am also, a big fan of engine flushing or engine oil flushing, Marvel Mystery Oil. I use it frequently. If I could buy that by, the drum, I would. I believe in it. I'm a very strong believer in that. I don't think these quick oil changes are beneficial to people's vehicle health, let's call it. I think for, the average person, maybe take it into a place that takes a little bit, better care and a little bit longer time to make sure, you're getting a good quality oil change.
We've become a go-to place in our little village here at the farm for working on vehicles, because the neighbors just don't trust the guys who have been their mechanics for years and years and years, because it's not working too well for them. And our son does a lot of work for the village, and he is unable to change the engine oil in less than 2 hours. And here's why. Exactly what you said. What he'll do is, when the vehicle comes in hot, meaning the engine's warmed up, immediately it goes on a lift. The first thing that happens is he pulls the drain plug for the engine oil. Second thing he does is pulls out the oil filter. And then while those are dripping, he checks the suspension, the drive line, the steering, the shock absorbers, all the other fluids, the serpentine belts, the pulleys, everything you could possibly think of that could wear, he checks while it's dripping. And many times I've compared what happens after the oil just stops running out of the engine versus how much oil comes out an hour later. And it's about a cup. A cup. We'll be right back. Lee Wickenhauser's with us, and he is in the sales department at Genesis Communications Network. Lee, what I was talking about is the quick oil change timing versus doing it yourself. And it seems to me that whether you bring it to a dealer or whether you bring it to a quick lube place or Walmart, they really don't have time for that car to sit up on that lift for an hour or two. So what I did was I measured the time. I had one of our instructors here. I was teaching a class, and I was showing him how to change the oil on his vehicle. So we put the vehicle up on the lift. As soon as he got here, everything was ready. The engine was warm. Actually, it was hot. And there's some risks involved in doing this. You can burn yourself. So if you do it, you need to take precautions to make sure that you don't burn yourself with hot engine oil. But what we did was we put it up on the lift, pulled the drain plug out, and I said to him, about when would one of those quick lube places put this drain plug back in? He said, now. Okay. So we put the drain plug, I put a cup under, a large metal cup under the drain plug to measure how much extra oil would come out. And I said, let's see how much extra oil comes out. By the way, we're doing this versus the quick change place.
Sure.
So an hour later, we had about a cup of oil. Now, if you contrast that to the quick oil change place, and they bang the car out, and you have this cup of dirty oil. Let's say you had a cup of used engine oil. Who in their right mind would say, I'll tell you what, I've got a cup of used engine oil. Let me put this in the engine. That's what we're talking about, right, Lee?
Yes, absolutely. You know, you want to get as clean oil in there as possible. You know, as you know, my grandma used to say, cleanliness is next to holiness. And having a clean, functioning oiling system is important. You know, there's very few daily driven cars or cars that would be considered, you know, daily drivers or commuter vehicles in my personal fleet of cars that do not have under 200,000 miles on them. Here's a really good example of making sure that you have good oil. I actually have a very close personal friend that owns a company called Lubrication Specialties out in Ohio. And they make really high quality synthetic based oils. And when I say synthetic based, it's not man-made oil. It means it's man-made detergents rather than, you know, just your standard, what, you know, car guys call dino juice is, you know, a little bit different type of formulation for the detergents. Getting back to my truck, I've got a 2003 F350 with a 6-liter Power Stroke in it. You know, a lot of people hate these engines. I actually like them. Once you get them to a certain point, they seem to run forever. I've got over 300,000 miles on that engine. The bottom end of that engine has never been apart. It's still, the only thing that has been changed from the block down is the oil pan. I changed it due to a rust issue. The motor has been out of the vehicle, but I've been running a high quality oil. For years, I ran Rotella. It's been a great oil. I didn't do some research. They have lessened the amount of zinc that's in it, which kind of left me feeling a little bit uncomfortable. Zinc is a good cushion for stress on the oil and impact. You know, you're talking about a very heavy rotating assembly. Crankshaft, rods, pistons, there's a lot of weight. You kind of need that little extra cushion. That's why the oil's a little thicker. But I switched over to a different brand of oil. It's Blue Diamond. It's expensive. I made a deal with my buddy Chris over at Lubrication Specialties. He goes, I'm going to send you a filter. It's an aftermarket filter. You still utilize your factory filter. He goes, I want you to run this oil 20,000 miles and take a sample and send it to us. And I told him, I'm like, are you crazy? I change oil in my truck. It's a diesel. I change it every 5,000 miles or sooner, like clockwork. And he goes, if you blow up that engine because of an oiling issue, he goes, I will buy you a brand new engine for your truck. And I'm like, you have my attention. So I've been running it. I'm at 35,000 miles on that oil. But I also have a secondary oil filter that I change every 5,000. I change my stock filter every 5,000 miles. And I've sent it in. And he goes, yep, you still got about another 100,000 miles to go. And I'm like, what? He goes, you got about 100,000 before that oil is broken down enough where it loses lubrication properties. Now, here's what else is I find very interesting about this, is when I've sent him in samples, the amount of metal that is in my oil has been decreasing. Now, that's a sign that the oil's doing its job. People ask, well, why do you do that? So I know the state of the internal components of my engine. It's something I highly recommend doing once a year if you put on a lot of miles, is having an oil analysis done. Costs a little bit of money, but it's worth it.
Think of it like a blood test.
Exactly.
Yeah. We'll be right back. Class, I'm finding this very interesting because Lee Wickenhauser and I have not discussed any of the topics that we would be talking about in this broadcast prior to the broadcast. And what I'm finding out, and you are at the same time, is that Lee Wickenhauser, independently from Vincent Finelli, has discovered the same things. And I used to use Shell Rotella oil as well in our diesels. It was considered once to be one of the best oils you could get. It was the go-to oil. I stopped using it probably almost 10 years ago for the same reasons that Lee Wickenhauser stopped using it. It stopped doing the things that it used to do for us. I don't think it's anywhere near as good. So we've switched as well because we don't want these engines to wear out. If you're talking about a Cummins turbo diesel engine in a Dodge truck, if you want to buy a replacement engine, you could be looking at $10,000. No exaggeration.
Easily. You know, here's a really good example. I bought a 2005 Ford Excursion with a 6-liter diesel in it. Looked at the truck. I've been looking forever for a nice, clean one. Found one. Had under 200,000 miles on it. I think it had 170 when I bought it. And I'm like, you know what? Thing runs great, sounds good. Main bearing. Well, the dealership dummied it up. Within a couple thousand miles, the main bearings failed in it. That engine cost me $18,000 installed. The only reason I had somebody else install it was A, I didn't have time, and B, I have a shop that I use on stuff that if I don't have time or something that's out of my wheelhouse, I trust them. And, you know, it cost me a lot of money. And the first thing he asked me is, what kind of oil do you want put in this engine? And I said, well, for break-in, I want Rotella. But I want you to put this additive in it. And he looked at me kind of funny. He goes, what is it? And I go, it's zinc. And he goes, good, because I was going to put it in there anyways. So Rotella was a great oil for years and years. I agree with you. Their synthetic is still a really good oil. I just prefer to have something with a different type of additive in it for protection against my investment. Basically, you know, I look at it this way. I put in the same amount of money as what my vehicle is worth. So now I have double my investment into it. So taking care of your engine is an important thing. People don't understand sometimes, you know, what type of catastrophic failures can happen if they don't take care of their vehicles.
Okay, let's talk about turbochargers for a minute. So, class, a turbocharger pushes, pumps, forces extra air into the combustion chamber so that you have more air to burn the fuel. So you have the potential for generating higher horsepower. But when you do that, you're also stressing everything more because you're making more horsepower out of the same engine. So smaller engines can make more horsepower, but it's absolutely critical that you change the oil regularly, on time, and before the oil is contaminated. Otherwise, you can cause increased accelerated wear on bearings, pistons, piston rings, cylinder walls, camshafts. Every moving part in the engine is subject to more wear if you have grit and dirt in the engine oil. Okay. But let's talk about just the turbocharger for a second. Turbocharger is driven by the exhaust gases. And the turbocharger is exposed to 1,500 degrees or more of exhaust temperatures. So it gets hot. And what happens is it uses engine oil to lubricate the bearings of the turbocharger. The turbocharger is a fan that spins at up to 100,000 revolutions per minute or more. I said that correctly. 100,000 revolutions per minute or more. So let's say you're driving and you're on the highway and you pull into that parking lot of that gas station to get something to drink or whatever you do, and you shut the engine off. That turbocharger has been spinning at 100,000 RPM, fully pressurized with oil for lubrication, and now it has no oil. And it continues to spin. What about the wear of that turbocharger by not idling down that engine? Lee Wickenhauser, what are your thoughts?
You know, this is my practice. I own 4 diesel vehicles with turbos. I have a Cummins, 5.9 Cummins. I've got 3 6-liter diesels. My wife always asks me this, and I explain to her, and I always give her this look like I've told you this a million times. When I come to shut the truck off, unless I've been driving at low speed, through a parking lot or something, I let the vehicle idle for about a minute, let things wind down, let things cool off. If you're just pulling off the highway into a gas station real quick and shut it off, my opinion, I believe it causes premature bearing failure. In the, world of turbos, there's different versions of it. There's ball bearing turbos, there's ceramic coated ball bearing turbos, there's bushing style turbos. Bushing style turbos absolutely need cool down time. Let the materials cool off and just kind of let them set, for a minute. They cool off, they last longer. I can't not stress that enough. I mean, I've got 300,000 miles on the original turbo in my truck. I bought it from the original owner. and I've owned it for the last 10 years. It's been off a couple times. I've had to clean it out, but it's still the original turbo. My Excursion, original turbo, 200,000 miles on it. Granted, it has a new motor in it, but it's still the original turbo. My Dodge, that one got a turbo early because it was driven on short trips and not allowed to cool off properly, and it prematurely ate the bearings in the turbo. So, and that, sends metal through the engine. It's through, the oiling system. It uses the existing oil system in the engine, pushes it up through a tube, dumps it through the bearings, puts it back in the oil pan or in the return system. So that any metal that comes from damage is going to go through your engine and cause premature wear or failure. So I agree with you. Letting a turbo cool down is very important, and using a high quality oil is just as important.
Let's talk about the drain plug of the oil pan. Most of the vehicles that we see here at the farm have just a standard drain plug, just a metal drain plug that's threaded and has either a copper washer or gasket, a aluminum one, or a synthetic rubber one. Whenever we can, we replace those with an aluminum drain plug with a ceramic magnet in the center of it.
Okay.
What are your thoughts about that?
Great
idea. They
idea.
only cost us about $3.
I think it's a great idea. Any way you can keep metal from going back through your oiling system is a good idea. There's a company out there called Filter Mag. It's a little clip-on magnetic assembly that goes onto your filter, keeps all the metal in the filter. Whether, if it's too small of a particulate, let's say you have a 10 micron filter and the particle's 3 microns. Keeps that from cycling through, and it's like sandpaper grit going through your oil and, eating at your main bearings, your camshaft, all kinds of different parts. So magnets are good. I mean, I go one step further than that, Vinny. Instead of utilizing a drain plug with a magnet, I went to a hardware store and I've bought them online too. I bought neodymium magnets, small little magnets, and I throw them up on the bottom of the oil pan if, in fact, it has a steel oil pan. If it's aluminum, obviously that won't work, but I also will put them on an oil filter. And that does work. It helps. I've cut open filters and I've looked at them. And, the amount of metallic in there is a lot higher. That's $10 to $20 cost that can save you thousands. I mean, I'll spend that $20 all day long to save me thousands of dollars later.
Right. These neodymium magnets are really, really strong. That's the type I'm talking about that we use here at the farm as well. And if you were to look, class, at most, but not all, transmission oil pans, you might find a magnet in the bottom. And what happens is that magnet attracts all of those ferrous metals that wear off the friction plates and the bearings and so forth. And if your vehicle has, let's say, 100,000 miles or more and the transmission has never been serviced, the transmission pan has never been off, you'll look at that transmission magnet, and it's grown a beard. It has literally grown a beard with metal filings sticking on all available surfaces of that magnet. Have you seen it too, Lee Wickenhauser?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now let's talk about changing transmission oil. Should we change it? Should we not? And I'll tell you why I'm saying this. Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and other manufacturers have told their customers that the transmission fluid is sealed for life. I don't know what that means. Life of what? What do you think? I think it's nuts.
Here's what's funny is it's a sealed system, meaning there's no fill plug, or not fill plug. They have a fill plug, but they do not have a dipstick. There's no filter that's serviceable by the average person. That's their way of making sure you have to take it to a dealership. Here's a good example. 2005 Cadillac CTS, 3.6 liter V6 car, automatic transmission, does not have a dipstick tube. It is something that you are supposed to take to a dealership to have them service the fluid. Well, I'm, found ways around that. You can still drop the pan, change the filter. So, I mean, that's still something that, somebody that has the ability and a little bit of know-how can still service it. They still, in the manuals, will give you a service interval of, 100,000 miles, 50,000 miles, 75,000 miles, whatever Mercedes recommends. They want you to bring it to a dealership, and they designed it so you have to. When they say for the life of the vehicle, there's still a life expectancy of, 100,000 miles or something on that. They kind of use that as a term sometimes for life, that, I don't ever have to touch it. That's not the case. It still should be changed. It does get dirty. It does have particulates in it. It should be changed. And they make it complicated on purpose. And I don't agree with it, but that's the manufacturers.
Yeah. When we come back after this break, I'd like to share with you something that we do. I'll bet you do the same thing at your shop. And this is about transmissions. And this can extend the life of your transmission dramatically. And you can do this yourself, or you can have somebody do it for you. And I'll tell you what it is when we come back. Class Lee Wickenhauser's with us. And Lee Wickenhauser spends a lot of his time at Genesis Communications Network. And I mentioned that he is one of those who is responsible for putting USA Prepares on Genesis Communications Network. I have kind of a personal question I'd like to ask him, and if you'd like to answer, Lee, that'd be great. If you don't want to, that's okay, too. So my question for you before I tell you about my what I do with transmissions here at the farm, why did you press for USA Prepares to be a broadcast on Genesis Communications Network years and years and years ago? Why was that?
Here's my personal opinion, Vinny, and I have no problem letting you know why I feel this way. I believe that the American people and even people in other countries have been snowballed. Nobody is out there teaching what you teach. Things that, to me, and I'm 43 years old, things my grandparents taught me. People aren't doing that anymore. People aren't learning to be self-sufficient. They're relying on the government, and they're relying on other things instead of being reliant on themselves. I feel every person on this planet should have an idea and, an escape plan or something to help them survive almost any situation, whether it be, getting mugged or their car breaks down or they have a water leak in their house. People should be prepared for that. But I'm not saying that, people should know these things so they don't have to hire a handyman or a mechanic or something like that. But some of the stuff is just good to know. My oldest daughter, she's in college. Actually, she graduated college. She's already old, getting old already. She's in Alabama. She used to hang out in the shop I worked at for years and just watch me do things. She learned how to change her own tire, change her oil, work on her car. One day she calls me, she's like, "Dad, I need an ignition switch for my Honda Accord. Is this something you think I can do?" And I go, "Absolutely, Kelsey. You can do this on your own. You've watched me do stuff like this before. Here's the tools you need." And I said, if you run into a problem, look on YouTube. There might be somebody that has a tutorial on there already, and it'll help walk you through it. She calls me back. She's like, "Dad, I did it on my own." And I'm like, that was a proud moment for me, knowing that I had succeeded. So I wanted other people to feel that type of feeling or just have that knowledge that you can provide. I feel you're doing an absolute great service to people, just in general, not just the American people. I was a firm believer you would do the right thing, and the way you present yourself and the way that you introduce new instructors and different subject matters. A lot of other shows don't do that. They may just be talking about survival in the wilderness every day, which is fine. That's great. But I think people need a variety of things, and you supply that. I think you have great intentions, and you do a great way of leading people. I feel you're a great leader. So there's just a few examples of why I really push to have you on and why I support your show.
I really appreciate it, Lee. Class, here's something that I do here at the farm. This is regarding automatic transmissions. Most of the American manufacturers that I've seen and been under those vehicles, like Dodge and Ford and Chevrolet, don't have a drain plug on the automatic transmission. So it's a messy job. I don't care how great a guy or gal is at working on these. The floor always gets oil on it, transmission fluid, when you work on a transmission that does not have a drain plug. So what I do is when I get that pan off that does not have a drain plug, I clean it really well. And then I drill a hole at the lowest point. I make sure I'm not going to drill a hole that's going to interfere with anything that's in the transmission. I line it up, find the lowest point, and then I drill a 1/4-inch hole in that bottom of the transmission oil pan. Then I braze, which is like weld, but I use brass. I braze onto that transmission pan an M10 nut, fine thread, metric. And then I have a little bolt that fits in there and a copper washer. So now I have converted my non-drain plug oil pan to one with a drain plug. Lee, I'll bet you do the same thing.
Absolutely, Vinny. We have like minds.
And you know, Mercedes has them. BMW has them. What's wrong with Ford, Chevy, Chrysler? What's wrong with that? Well, for about 30 cents, you can do the same thing. Or if you have to hire somebody, maybe $5 to have them braze that on for you. You can do it.
Exactly. It's a good thing to do. Early preventative maintenance.
Quick, give me a number. How many miles do you go between transmission oil changes?
75,000 on average.
There you go.
Depending on
Lee
use.
Wickenhauser, I hope you can come back again and again. Can you?
I can most certainly do that, Vinny.
Lee Wickenhauser, thank you so much for being with us.